This is Uncle Ruckus. No relation. I'm a very spiritual person. I start out each day thanking the man for the sunrise, for the land I walk on, for the air I breathe, and for this show, the era of Reconstruction.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on with Michelle Mybelle Obama? She is apparently on the campaign trail making videos trying to bolster hiding Biden, as well as slander Trump for any and everything. Possibly even the betrayal of Jesus in the Garden of Eden. Welcome to another edition of the Era of Reconstruction, a podcast by New Journey Pack Production, this Wednesday, October the 7th, 2020. I am your host, Darren Williams, and yes, I am a black conservative. I've been a black conservative since I came out of the womb. So it hasn't been a recent transfer because of our great president. It has been since I came out of the womb. Can you imagine that, being a black conservative since birth? So what happened when I was born, and just let me give you some idea about that. I was given a couple of things. Of course, I was given a name, birth certificate. And then I was giving a social security card because I was meant to work. And then the other thing I was given a registration card. And so that registration card was to vote, not, of course, immediate, but when I turned the proper age, the voting age. So, but anyways, I am a black conservative. I'm on the air with you today, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things today. In particular, we're going to be talking and really dissecting the speech by Michelle Mybelle Obama. It is amazing how this woman can get in front of a camera. And I think probably just because it is a camera and it's not in front of a bunch of people, and she just blatantly lies. She regurgitates lie after lie after lie. It's almost like she's projecting. It's almost like what she's saying is actually, in actuality, you know what I'm saying to you is what the Democrats and what Obama, my husband, and what I do all the time. But what I'm going to do today, or what I'm going to do on this this video that I'm making, is I'm going to blame everything that we do as Democrats and liberals on Republicans and conservatives. And more importantly, I'm going to blame it on President Trump. That's what she's doing. And so we're going to kind of dissect everything she talks about. And I'm going to play some excerpts of what she's saying, and then we'll go through the process of debunking everything that she's saying, because the stuff is totally false, and it needs to be addressed. And I think we here at the Era of Reconstruction are all about destructing as well as reconstructing narratives. That's what we're here for. So let's begin. This is actually the 24-minute video that she did the other night, and how she urges the American people to apparently wake up and realize that the chaos in America has everything to do with Trump. So I'm going to be taking a couple of excerpts from it, and then I'm going to be explaining how this chick is lying. So here we go.
Believe it or not, the election is right around the corner. Votes are already being cast. And if you're still deciding who to vote for or whether to vote at all, I wanted to take a moment to remind you what's at stake and to urge you to make a plan to vote today.
Now, let me say something real quick. If you're still trying to figure out who to vote for, whether it be Trump or whether it be Biden, there's a serious problem with you. And I know in previous episodes here, Audrey Pruitt, our great CEO, has said, there's the 10 percenters, and there might be, but what are they waiting for? A great debate? Or are they waiting for like a dove to come down and touch them on the head and say, hey, I need you to vote for blah, 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 or whoever? These past 4 years, should have shown everyone, I mean, not even the past 4 years, but yeah, the past 4 years should have shown everybody that there's really only one person to vote for, which is Trump. But even more so, these past 6 to 7 months have shown you that the only person really to vote for, if you want to exist anymore, I mean, if you want your constitutional rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, which is being jeopardized, freedom to bear arms, which actually I am armed to the teeth. Here in Maryland, we have it to where we have to wait every 30 days, well, 37 days, because it's 30 days and then you got to wait another 7 days. But each 37 days, I go out and buy a weapon. Isn't that crazy? But anyways, nonetheless, my point is, if you don't know who you're voting for by now, God help you. Okay, let's proceed with this. Hold on.
Because let's be honest, right now our country is
Michelle,
in
let's be
chaos
honest.
because of a president who isn't up to the job.
Wait a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, she's right. The country is in chaos, but it has nothing to do with President Trump. It has everything to do with the left, with Democrats. It has everything to do with Black Lives Matter. It has everything to do with Antifa. It has everything to do with rioting. Oh, no. I'm sorry, Darren. No, these are peaceful protests. I mean, when I throw a brick through a window and I crash it and then, I jump in there and I steal stuff, or I burn down a building, even in a black area, that's a part of my peaceful protesting. That's perfectly fine. So, in actuality, the reason why I'm doing this is because Trump has been provoking me to do this, and it's just the way I know how to explain and express myself. And so, here she is saying that there's chaos, which she's absolutely right. There is a lot of chaos going on, but that chaos, which she never points out as I continue with this video, is that it's from the left. It's from the people that basically she has never condemned. And basically, if you don't condemn them, you condone them. And people say, oh, well, I'm not going to condemn them and, I'm not on their side. But if you're not fighting against them, you're condoning them. And so here we are, her making the statement, and it's a bold-faced lie statement. And we haven't even gotten 26 seconds into the presentation. She's already lying. So let's continue with this.
And if we want to regain any kind of stability, we've got to ensure that every eligible voter is informed and engaged in this election.
All right, tell us what we need to do.
Because the stakes are on display every day.
What type of
Not just
stakes?
in the headlines, but in our families.
Ooh, in the family.
If you're a parent like me, you're feeling the consequences of this president's failure to take this pandemic seriously, from his constant downplaying of the importance of masks and social distancing, to his relentless pressure on schools to open without offering a clear plan or meaningful support to keep students and teachers safe.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen. President Trump, since this virus came to America, President Trump has been on board with everything. He has. He was the first one to shut down flights from China, and then, of course, flights from Europe when everyone was calling him a racist and being xenophobic. He was the first one to say it, and the Democrats didn't get on board until a month or and a half later. The other thing is that what President Trump practices, and we were talking about when she's mentioning the schools and how he doesn't have a clear-cut plan for the schools of reopening and keeping the teachers and the students safe, that's actually not his job. Okay, what Trump practices is federalism. And if for those in Rio Linda who don't know what federalism is, it is basically allowing the states to run their states, allowing the governors to run their states, allowing mayors to run their cities. See, Republicans, conservatives are big on limited government. And so the best thing to do is just basically allow the states to mandate or to develop what's the best policy for that particular state. Because, this COVID-19, this Wuhan virus, or whatever you want to call it, is affecting people differently in different states. So it's not a communist regime where it's like everyone has to follow something specifically, all 360 million Americans. No, it's not that way, because all states are different. There are some states where the cases are higher, and then there are some that are lower. And so you can't lump everybody into that New York format in which they were trying to do originally with Cuomo and his stupidity. But anyways, the point is that it has nothing to do with President Trump. It has everything to do with the governor establishing the requirements or the regulations of how to open schools safely. And Trump has provided all the information as well as the equipment necessary to do those things. So again, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, we're only a minute and 10 seconds into it. And here she is, like I said, she is blaming Trump for something that he absolutely has nothing to do with. All right. So let's continue and see what she says about kids, her kids, our kids, whoever kids. Doesn't make a difference.
Look, our daughters are in college now. And
Where
luckily,
they at?
they're
Harvard?
taking classes from home this semester.
Ooh, aren't you living
But
in
in
$15
just
million
a few
home?
weeks since schools have
Martha's
resumed,
Vineyard?
many of their friends who returned to campus have either tested positive, or are living
right.
with someone who has.
I hear you,
Yes,
girl.
it's anecdotal, of
Holla.
course, and everybody wants their kids back in school as soon as it's safe.
Yes, they do. And actually, it is safe for the kids to go to school. The CDC has already stated that the likelihood of kids catching COVID and them being symptomatic is very small. And so the kids can actually go back to school, but also they have virtual schooling. So, this whole thing, of course, what she's going to do is she's going to end up blaming Trump for the situation of kids possibly catching the COVID in school. This leads me to a question. And I know this has been rehearsed over and over again by the media and by the CDC about mask and social distancing. Ladies and gentlemen, do mask and social distancing really work? They're not scientifically proven. They're not. There's no scientific study that one can find where it says, oh, here's a situation where when people were wearing masks and when people were separating themselves 6 feet apart, that actually this prevented the spread of COVID or any other virus. It doesn't work. So basically what is being attempted is to fly the plane as they build it. And so it is indicative of what we have from the left. The left is amazing at projecting that all these things that are going on, wearing the mask or not wearing the mask. And we know Nancy Pelosi was caught red-handed with not wearing a mask at a beauty salon, or even de Blasio was not wearing a mask at a particular location. But all this stuff is the fault of Republicans, conservatives, and of course, the main man in charge, President Trump. But anyways, let's continue on and see what she has to say.
Most cases in young people are mild, and I pray every day that no one faces longer-term consequences to this disease. But the truth is, we just don't know yet. And we simply cannot trust this president to tell us the truth about anything.
Well, first of all, the person who's telling the president is Fauci, okay? Dr. Fauci. At one point, Dr. Fauci said there was no mask necessary to wear. And then he backtracked and he said, oh, no, we need to wear the mask. No, we need to wear the mask. Actually, it was Fauci as well as Dr. Birch and also this doctor from England who said, in the first beginning, there's going to be 2.5 million Americans dying. And that was before mitigating circumstances. But when they considered social distancing and wearing masks, they got to 500,000. So now we're at 210,000. And then on top of that, is it really 210,000 or are the numbers inflated? So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting conflicting information. But see, all that is blamed on the president. It is the perfect time to blame President Trump for any and everything that's possible. And it's interesting how, we seem to go back and forth on particular things of blaming him for. Well, we blame him on racism. I think that was last week after the debate. Trump did not denounce white supremacist. Trump is a racist. So basically, we're beating him up on that now this week because he caught COVID. And then all of a sudden, he's supposedly risking those in the White House as news outlets are saying that people are leaking the information. We're blaming him for COVID, for his lackadaisical attitude, my tongue tied, lackadaisical attitude for this pandemic. He's taking this thing very seriously. And basically what I'm going to do is there's an article that I'm going to showcase that will give you a great understanding of what he's done. The article is actually written back in April, and it's in the Baltimore Sun by someone very knowledgeable. But anyways, it's going to show how the only person that's taken all this seriously is the president that we have in the White House. So, but let's continue on and hear what Michelle has to say, and we can deconstruct this foolishness that she's talking about.
Who in the greatest crisis of our lifetimes doubled down on division and resentment, railed against measures that could have mitigated the damage, and continues to hold massive events without requiring masks or social distancing, knowingly exposing his own supporters to a dangerous virus because of a...
Now, that's interesting. That's very, a lot of liberals, radical liberals, whatever you want to call them, have been chastising Trump because he's had these major big rallies. And, it's interesting how they're jumping on this because, back in 2016, a little bit before the election, he was having, he was bringing in these major rallies and people were poo-pooing them away. And they were saying, the rallies, they don't mean anything. The poll numbers are the true indicators of who's going to win and who's going to lose. And of course, Hillary Clinton, she's at the top. So, we're not worried about these rallies, but now, because he won and the rallies are huge indicators, here she is saying that the rallies are super spreaders. Okay. It's kind of difficult to spread the coronavirus when you're outside. It's much easier, as they say, to spread it when you're inside. But these rallies are outside. They're outside. They're in hangars. So anyways, but the point being is that she doesn't mention about protesters. She doesn't mention about rioters and looters. She just doesn't. And it's interesting because there is an official, I think it's de Blasio, the other day, said that, sometimes we have to risk the possibility of COVID to express ourselves. And what he's meaning is he's saying, for those Trump supporters who go out to rallies, no, you're the bad guys. You don't deserve to go out because you can actually spread COVID. And what you're doing is anti-American. But for those who are tearing down buildings, who are burning buildings, who are shooting people, beating people up and robbing and stealing, no, actually, you're perfectly fine because we're in a situation where, it's challenging right now and we need to express ourselves and all forces are arrayed against us. And this is our First Amendment right to protest, which of course, protesting is not in the First Amendment, ladies and gentlemen. It's a peaceful assembly. And actually that relates to religion. But anyways, that's a discussion for another day. Let's get back to Michelle Mybelle Obama and her rambling. I'm going to try to find a really good spot where she talks about Joe Biden.
That all families can get back on their feet and our economy can get back on track.
She's talking about the economy. The economy was shut down by Democrats, and we all know that. That's nothing new. But hold on.
To get something done, even across our differences. And we can trust Joe Biden to name Supreme Court justices who follow in the footsteps of Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth Bader Ginsburg she presided over mass murder, ladies and gentlemen. And what I mean by that is abortion. She presided over that like it was no big thing. She didn't even bring up the topic of abortion. And now here the left wants to find someone who will also reside over mass murder, the killing of innocent children. But even before she talked about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she said that Joe is an honest man that follows fundamental principles. That's interesting because that reminds me of when Joe Biden bragged about how he got the prosecutor in Ukraine fired because he blackmailed him and held the aid money over his head and said, hey, if you do not fire the prosecutor, he was talking to Ukraine, if you do not fire the prosecutor, basically, I'm going to hold up the money the aid money for you. And basically what he was attempting to do is they were attempting to go after his son, Hunter Biden, because of his dealings in Ukraine. And basically Joe Biden was like, you know what, you're going to need this aid because of Putin. But you know what? I'm not going to give it to you unless you get rid of this prosecutor. And he bragged about it. And he laughed about it. He said, well, damn it, they got rid of the guy. So you're talking about a guy who follows fundamental principles? Please. I think that would be better placed in the hands and in the lap of President Trump. But here we go.
Understand that justice and equality aren't theoretical ideas, but concrete matters that affect our health care, our livelihoods, and our bodies.
Our bodies.
This
She's talking about abortion, ladies and
is the kind
gentlemen.
of leader our nation deserves.
She's talking about Joe Biden.
A leader who is tested and ready to dive right in. A leader who
Joe Biden can only be tested when he has a microphone in his ear, and then when they ask the questions, he gives an answer, and it's basically the answer that has been mapped out for him, maybe 30 to 40 or even an hour beforehand given to him. That's the only person that Joe Biden really is. So it's interesting how she's saying all this stuff of how great Joe Biden is. But, listen, Joe Biden has dementia. He's not going to last long. If by chance he were to be elected, there is a couple of people behind the curtain that are propping Joe up. I mean, of course, Kamala Harris is there, another terror on the streets, and another huge radical abortionist. But anyways, Joe Biden wouldn't last 3 months. He would either pass the presidency over to Harris or he would continue there and have the cabal behind him run everything, ladies and gentlemen. We would have a literal paper tiger. And, remember 8 years of Obama he was a paper tiger as well. But anyways, let's move on to something else. Let's see what else she's talking about here, the lies that she's projecting, and we can dissect it.
An overwhelmingly peaceful movement for racial solidarity.
Ooh, she's talking about BLM.
Research backs it up. Only a tiny fraction of demonstrations have had any violence at all.
Ooh, can you believe this?
So what the president is doing is once again...
She is attempting to say that BLM, Black Lives Matter, which Black lives really don't matter. But anyway, she's trying to say that BLM is a peaceful organization that likes to protest and likes to express themselves because of racial insensitivity and, racial inequality. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no racial inequality in America. If you follow the laws, if you get an education, and if you work hard, doesn't make a difference who you are going to prosper a lot better than not doing those things. And I want to get into this because I think it's very important to understand and it's very important to elaborate on. The best country for Black Americans and for minorities and for anybody, even white people, is America. We have the most millionaires. We have the best education. Now, depending on what you're educated in, that's the difference. But anyways, you have the best universities to go to, and if you're not brainwashed, to learn something. And then you have the best avenues of making money, hand over fists. Listen, it's amazing how you have these youngsters, and let's get race out of the equation, but young people that are 12, 13, 14, and 15, they can end up making $50,000 in passive income by being on YouTube. So if that's the case, then how can you possibly say that this country is racist? Where's the racism? One can't even point to it. I mean, I know people say, "Oh, well, the cops are they're gunning down black men." No, they're not. No, they're not. Ladies and gentlemen, there are more white people that are shot by the cops than black people. Now, there may be 1 year, but on average, you look at 10, 20 years, there's more white people being shot. And I'm talking about per capita. More white people are being shot by cops than black people. And this is the other thing. The ones that are being shot, the blacks that are being shot by cops, they're not upstanding citizens. None of them are. I mean, if you want to go back and you want to call out some names of some people who've lost their life, and unfortunately they've lost their life, George Floyd. Unfortunate that he lost his life, but he wasn't a pillar in the community, ladies and gentlemen. He wasn't. You know, the I can't even think of the young kid's name in Washington, D.C., who basically was shot by the officer. He wasn't a pillar. He was a thug. These people, blacks, that are being shot are not men who have wonderful families and they go off to work and they you know, they're pillars in the community. They respect law and they respect order. They pay their bills on time. They're peaceful neighbors. These people aren't getting shot. These people aren't getting killed. It's the thugs that are getting killed. And listen, I can say that, and anyone can say that, not just because I'm black, but it's because it's the truth. It is the truth. So anyways, again, what she is attempting to do is project. And see, this is the thing. In her speech, she never mentions that here you have Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Okay, if they are peaceful and you do have small protests, then you say for those violent protests or the small bit of it, we don't condone that. We condemn it to the utmost. She doesn't mention that at all. She doesn't say that. What she goes on to say is, oh, no, you know, there's a small segment and it's backed up by facts. Who is giving out these facts? You're talking about the leftist media? Really? Is that who we're supposed to believe? I mean, listen, we have people, conservative people who are out there. And this is the thing. They didn't even want to acknowledge the violence until it started showing up on YouTube when conservative journalists were out there filming the stuff and showing it. And, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, well, it's a very, very small percent. Okay, so what you're telling me is what's going on in Portland for months is a very small percent? I mean, not to the Portland residents, it's not. It's anarchy. I mean, it is captivity. So anyways, here we go. Here's Michelle, my Belle Obama.
Patently false. It's morally wrong. And yes, it is racist. But that doesn't mean it won't work. Because this is a difficult time, a confusing time. And when people hear these lies and crazy conspiracies repeated over and over and over again,
From the
they
media.
don't know what to think.
The media is reporting
with
crazy
everything going on in
conspiracies.
their lives. They don't have time to fact check falsehoods being spread throughout the internet.
You know what's interesting about that? I don't know if you guys ever read Aldous Huxley, A Brave New World. So there's, how would I say this? So there's George Orwell's 1984, where the government holds the information from you, all right? And they give you very little of the information, and they watch you. They're constantly watching you. But then there's Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where so much information is being thrown at you at once. It's too much, and you can't chop up the information or dissect it or whatever the case might be, or digest it even with that. So it's almost like you just give up. And you say, oh, I don't know, and I don't care. You become, you become numb to the information. And so it's interesting how she's saying that all this information is being thrown out. Who's throwing out the information? Who owns news outlets? 90% of news outlets are being owned, or they're owned by the left. They're the ones who are throwing out this false information. They are. Constantly throwing out false information. I mean, false information on the coronavirus, false information on the riots and looting, false information on who really is the problem. It's not President Trump. It's Joe Biden. So here she is, again, the tactic of the left and of communists, because Nikita Khrushchev did this as well when he supposedly denounced Stalin, is to project it on other people. I mean, it's notorious. So anyways, but let's see what else she has to say.
And even reasonable people might get scared. And the one thing this president is really, really good at is using fear and confusion and spreading lies to win. Look, I get it, but I also feel it. As a Black woman who has,
here's the race
like
thing.
the overwhelming
The
majority
Black
of
woman.
people.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that shows you where her mindset is. I don't want to continue on with this because it's obvious that this woman has mental and emotional issues. She really does. And then she caps it off by the whole Black thing. And that's where I wanted to stop because I'll be honest with you. I think the woman has a problem with being Black. I think she does. I think she really, really does. Either she has a problem with being Black or she has a problem with everyone else being white. One of the two. And she's probably jealous that she's not white. She has a big problem. Everything with her is about race. And it's surprising that it took her almost 15 minutes to get into race. And this thing is only 24 minutes. But anyways, my point is what she's showing you. She's showing you that she doesn't care about anyone. What she cares about is power. What the Democrats care about, is control. I had to clear my throat. They care about control. They care about maintaining control. They're very upset. They haven't gotten over 2016. Of course, Hillary hasn't gotten over 2016. She's still blabbering about it, but they haven't gotten over 2016. A lot of establishment types haven't gotten over 2016 because they thought they had it in the bag. And what's happening now is that they're pulling out all the stops here. The polling numbers are giving an indication that Joe Biden is up ahead, 400 points or whatever it is. I mean, I know it's probably like 8 points or 14 points or whatever the case may be. But it's almost like what they've done or what they're doing is they're taking the Hillary Clinton playbook that they had, but they're putting steroids on the stuff. And they're like, we're going for broke because if we don't get him now, then, we may not have another opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. I do believe that President Trump is going to win re-election. I do believe that. And listen, I'm not a fanboy. There's a couple of policies that President Trump has that I don't particularly agree with. And I'm not going to name them, but there are maybe about two or three that they don't thrill me. But nonetheless, I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I mean, he's a fantastic president. I mean, he has done so much for the country. It's ridiculous. But see, they don't want you to know that in their message. And Democrats have a great message. It's 24/7. Unfortunately, Republicans, we don't have a 24/7 message. We think that, oh, no, people will get it, when they start paying taxes or when they'll get older, they'll get it. No, they won't get it. That's not how people function. You have to repeat stuff to them over and over and over and over again. And then they will eventually get it. They'll adopt it. It'll become a part of their psyche. That's how it works. That's literally how it works. And so Republicans need to start thinking in the sense of delivering their message 24/7 as what Democrats do. They don't waste any time or any opportunity to disseminate their message. They really don't. They're very focused on that. And I hate their ideology, but I got to admit it. They have a way of making sure their message gets out, whether it's in K through 12, whether it's in music, whether it's at colleges and universities, whether it's in movies, whether it's on Netflix. They have the ability to do that. And here we are, conservatives. And I know, everyone says, well, conservatives need to not focus on the culture war, but that's where it is all resides. It resides in the culture war. And we're like, oh, no, you need to focus on policies and you need to focus on economics and all that stuff. No, everything starts with the culture. It does. It really does. And Republicans, conservatives need to start waking up to that. That's where it resides. But anyways, we went through this thing with Michelle Obama when we were talking about how Trump is to blame for everything. And that's truly what Michelle Obama believes. That's what she thinks, and she's, I guess, sticking to her story. What I wanted to do was to point out this story by a Mick Kemper, which basically was in the Baltimore. Well, it was in the Baltimore Sun on April 16th of this year, and he wrote. And the title is called "Stop Blaming Trump for the spread of the coronavirus." And I'm going to read you some excerpts, and it's very good. It's very good. He says, "It's unpleasant to be trapped behind four walls, hiding from the coronavirus. It's even more unpleasant to hear politicians and reporters finger pointing and salivating at another opportunity to discredit our president." I like the way he's starting this. "People are dying, loss of their jobs, and are stranded in their homes. It is time to unify and support, not for finding fault. But if you want to play the blame game, make sure you have all the pieces. President Donald Trump has not been the cause of any delay or slow response, i.e. to the COVID virus." He says he was one of the first world leaders to limit travel from China and eventually Europe. At the time, he was chastised by the World Health Organization for overreacting, criticized by European leaders who later shut down their own borders, and demonized by hiding Joe Biden, who said Mr. Trump had a record of hysteria, xenophobia, and fear-mongering. Man, this guy's going pretty good with this. And then he says, Mr. Trump fully committed the Center for Disease Control and every other federal health organization to our defense. This includes around 80,000 doctors, microbiologists, and other personnel experienced in dealing with medical crisis. He deployed the National Guard to build hospitals and distribute food and supplies. He sent hospital ships. Remember, he sent those hospital ships to New York and Los Angeles. You remember that? So he sent the hospital ships to New York and Los Angeles. Cuomo didn't even need them. He wasn't even really using them. Those things were just sitting in the water for no reason at all. It goes on. He obtained the cooperation of private corporations to transform their operations into the manufacturing of mass respirators and other supplies to meet the extraordinary demands. That's amazing. That's amazing. President Trump got private corporations to transform their operations. Some of these places, I think, were making pillows. They were making mattresses, and then they transformed it and they started making masks and respirators. Ladies and gentlemen, I go back to this thing. Only in America can you do this. Only in America is this possible. Anyways, he goes on. He says, President Trump also signed a $2.2 trillion funding package to mitigate the impacts of an economic slowdown on employees and employers. That was tremendous, ladies and gentlemen. That was tremendous. It was. I mean, it is another tick in our deficit, but it was very necessary. I mean, I have to admit, it was very necessary. And so he did a great job with that. He also worked closely with governors, respecting their authority to address the needs of their own states while providing backup resources. And that's what I'm talking about, federalism, ladies and gentlemen. Trump didn't tell the states what to do. He didn't tell the states that they could do this and they can't do that. No, he said, listen, it's your states. The people have elected you, and so you do what seems best. All right, and it's a great thing. Let's see, what else did he do? He has given the nation daily updates. Now, this was back in April, but he says that he has given the nation daily updates, praised the medical community, and expressed that not even one death is acceptable. All right. Now, he does say something which is a little interesting, but he picks it back up. He says he has occasionally been over optimistic or given us false hope, but only to dampen the level of panic. And that's very important, ladies and gentlemen. He's been criticized, for saying, oh, well, the virus will disappear, or, we can beat this. This is not as bad as what we think it might be. Ladies and gentlemen, that is encouragement. It's encouragement. When someone is laying on their deathbed, or they're going through a surgery. You don't stick the knife in them even more. You say, you know what, everything's going to be okay. We're going to get through this. You're going to be fine. You're going to be stronger than before. Everyone would do this with a loved one. You wouldn't say to your loved one, oh, yeah, you're going to bite the dust. You're going to be pushing up daisies. We're going to be burying you very soon. Oh, man, you're a goner, dude. No one says that. So why in the world would the president of the United States say that to people? Anyways, nevertheless, if you must blame someone, then start with the following list. Blame the Chinese government. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the coronavirus did not come from President Trump. He didn't have this in his back pocket. He just threw it in the air and it just started, going around attacking people. No, this came from Wuhan. This is a Wuhan virus. And interestingly enough, because it is 19, apparently there must have been 18 strands before this. So anyways, he says, blame the Chinese government, which concealed the breakout and delayed the release of key information. The World Health Organization that announced on January 14th that the virus was not transferable between humans, only to backpedal on January 30th, 16 days later, and declared a global health emergency. The Democrat Party, which distracted the government through the early days of the crisis with counterproductive impeachment proceedings. Ladies and gentlemen, that's who you can blame in America. Of course, we can't blame the Chinese for, we can't go over there and beat up on them. But the point is that we can blame the Democrats for basically backtracking and for basically, just belaboring the situation and causing us to lose ground. That's who we can blame on this thing. And so, this thing reads on and I can go on, but the point is that everything that the president has done up until today has been sterling in reference to the coronavirus. It has been. It's been awesome. So I go back to my point. If you're still wondering who you should vote for, ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty sad. It is pretty sad because there is one person standing alone fighting for every American. He's not just fighting for conservatives. He's not just fighting for Republicans. He is fighting for the people that hate him. You know what's the amazing thing, and I want to point this out, and I think this goes in line with President Trump. There's another group of people who are basically commissioned to protect babes and fools, who are commissioned to protect the people that hate them. And those are police officers. That's law enforcement. And here you have, we live in a country, we live in a country now where you have people outwardly hating the police, outwardly attacking them. But if Michael Brown were to rob you, if Trayvon Martin were to take your car or bust in your house, George Floyd, who would you call? Ghostbusters? No, you would call the cops if you don't have a firearm. And most of these Democrat cities, they won't even allow you to have a firearm. So you're at the mercy of the cops, ladies and gentlemen. You look at Portland, Oregon. These people, the cops, they're so beaten up now that I don't know if they're coming. They've berated them so much. But the cops are still there to serve and protect. They take an oath. They're not out here gunning down black men. They don't care. They got their own problems. They want to go home to their own wives and their own husbands, their kids. They're not interested in, let me wake up this morning and see how many black males I can kill. They're not thinking like that. They want to enjoy life just as much as everyone else wants to. They want to go back home to their family. They want to enjoy life as what it should be. But here you have a society of people, and I'm talking about on the left, Democrats, liberals, psychotics, who are telling you to defund the cops. Okay, if you defund the cops, who in the world is going to protect you? And let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's not the everyday black person out there who's working hard, who's following the law, who's paying taxes, They're not asking for the cops to be defunded. Let me tell you something. When something goes down in a black community, it's not a white person who's calling the cops to come there and to resolve it. No, it's actually your fellow black person who's like, you know what? I pay taxes in this neighborhood and my house is here and I appreciate it. It's a huge investment. And I really do not want, whether you're white or black, to be tearing up my stuff. And so they're the ones who call the cops. All right. So let's get that straight. It's not white people, coming from their neighborhood or even in the neighborhood that are really calling the cops. It's blacks calling the cops on other blacks, the stupid ones. All right. So let's get that straight. But anyways, like I said, you have a lone man, President Trump, who is out here defending the country. China is one of our biggest enemies. And you have people as if they're our biggest friends. They're the ones who released this virus on us, ladies and gentlemen. They released it, and you have these celebrities that are trying to make China out to be some utopia. What's the interesting thing about China? The propaganda that China shows you. When China is so, how would you put it? There's so much on lockdown and restricted to show things outside of maybe Beijing, Hong Kong. Well, there's no such thing as Hong Kong anymore, but Singapore, they don't show the rest of their provinces. Why? Because they're slums, they're ghettos. The people are malnourished. I mean, they're being tortured. They're in concentration camps. And if you don't believe me, ladies and gentlemen, take a trip there. Seriously, take a trip there. You think about Wuhan. This virus broke out in a province. How in the world does that happen? In a province where there's people there. And a virus broke out. Here we are in America, and people, we're up in arms, which is legitimate when a chemical company is in a community. But it's perfectly fine in China to have a chemical company or a biotech company that can basically have an outbreak and it hit a community. So we're not thinking about that. What are we thinking about? Well, we're thinking about because Trump, and the reason why the coronavirus exists is because President Trump, he's the president, and that's basically why. It's foolishness, ladies and gentlemen. It's complete foolishness. But anyways, this leads to another thing, which I think the media is salivating over. So apparently what's going on is that there are major leaks in the White House, and they're all based off of so-called misleading medical reports, backtracking doctors, and a confused timelines. How a paranoid Trump's fear of leaks has left his own team in the dark about the severity of his health condition, and possibly theirs. This actually comes from the Daily Mail UK. And basically what it's saying is that some unnamed sources, high-ranking officials, are saying that the White House is in confusion. We hear this all the time, ladies and gentlemen. They never name you who the sources are. What they say to you is that, they're unnamed, and we don't know who they are, but it's one of these situations where we believe it. There used to be a time when that was said, that you could honestly believe that there was a source, whether it was in the White House or whether in the kitchen or whatever the case may be, said something. Nowadays, ladies and gentlemen, you can't take that at face value. You can't. You have to question it. Because, see, the media will do anything and everything to convince you that they're right and you're wrong, and you're devastatingly wrong if you don't believe in what they say. And so the story goes on and expresses how, the staff is very concerned and very confused, and they're believing that they're going to be infected by the coronavirus. That what they're doing is that they're saying that Trump is the one that spread it, and Trump is not the one that spread it. They're saying that Hope Hicks, was the particular one who started it. But this is the interesting thing about it, ladies and gentlemen. We don't know, and this is the interesting thing. We don't know if some of these Democrats had it or have it or what have you. I mean, the main focus is on President Trump, and I get it. He's the president of the United States. But how do we know that Joe didn't have it when he was hiding in the basement? How do we know that? How do we know that Kamala Harris didn't have it? Because where was she, almost 3 weeks ago? No one knew. She wasn't on the campaign trail. I mean, heavily. She was basically hiding somewhere. So how do we know that they didn't have it? How do we know that Nancy Pelosi didn't have it? I mean, she wasn't wearing that mask when she went to the hairdresser. So how do we know? This is the confusing thing. And this is what the media constantly tries to put on us, that, believe what we say, and you're a better person. You're virtuous, or you're noble. So, here we are with these leaks. Listen, the media says that there are leaks. I don't believe it. This has constantly been going on. I do believe in the past there have been some leaks. But, at this junction, I think we're at, how would you say, we're at the 11th hour with this, and they're willing to say and do anything to try to push their agenda forward. But, as I go back to this, I want to tell you, we need to make a decision. And for those who have not made a decision yet, you got to make a decision. You got to look at things with eyes wide open and realize, after this election, where do you want to be? Do you want to be on the road to recovery? Do you want to be on a road where the unlimited possibilities of the American dream are at your disposal? They're at your fingertips. They're right in your reach. Then you got to vote for Trump. If you want to continue to celebrate liberty, prosperity, if you want to continue to celebrate the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, which government hates, big government hates the Bill of Rights. If you want the opportunity to be whatever you want to be in this country, you got to vote for Trump. Now, on the other hand, if you want to be an individual where you're enslaved, where you're told what to do, what to think, how to act, how to feel, then Joe Biden is the choice. Because it's not going to be Joe Biden telling you what to do. It's going to be, his cabal. It's going to be Kamala Harris. They're going to be telling you what to do. And at some point, and then telling you what to do, they're going to cross something that you don't want to do. And then you're going to have to make a choice. Do I continue to follow them, or do I buck the system? And that by that time, it might be too late for you, ladies and gentlemen. It might be. Trump is not perfect, ladies and gentlemen. I wouldn't have him for my pastor, no. I wouldn't have him for my rabbi or whatever the case may be. But see, that's not what we elected him for. We elected him because he is a promise keeper. Ladies and gentlemen, he has done so much. He's accomplished so much in this country since he's been president. It is absolutely ridiculous. It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen. And so, almost 4 million jobs were created since his election. 4 million jobs. Americans are now employed at record levels, at huge record levels, ladies and gentlemen. Manufacturing jobs. And this is pre-COVID, okay? I mean, we lost ground. We lost ground, unfortunately. But, as he brought back the economy, he can do it again. He can do it again, ladies and gentlemen. Before COVID, we were hitting quarters of 4.2% economic growth. I mean, during Obama's tenure, I think we were hitting like 1.9. I think that was the highest. And he was talking about managing the decline. This is what Obama was saying. Hey, Trump brought back And this is, like I said, this is pre-COVID. Over 500,000 manufacturing jobs, easily, ladies and gentlemen. Women's unemployment had reached its lowest in 65 years. Women, ladies, 65 years, the lowest rate in 65 years. Needless to say, black unemployment, historical lows. Latino unemployment, Hispanic American unemployment, Asian unemployment, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, the stuff that he's done is fantastic. And so I go back to that. Do we want more of that? The tax cuts, ladies and gentlemen, amazing. Everybody says, oh, well, he's cutting tax for the corporations. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, when you give tax breaks to corporations, you know what they do with that money? And everybody says, oh, no, they'll buy another portion. No, they won't. They will invest in the company, and investing in the company, generally R&D, improving things, is basically hiring more people to help. And so when people are hired, they get money, and then they can go home to their spouse and to their kids, and they can buy their kids stuff. That's how that works. There's nothing wrong with giving corporations tax breaks. Now, interestingly enough, corporations end up paying more taxes. They do. But it's good to give them a break in the beginning to get started. And the more revenue they make, ladies and gentlemen, listen, the more revenue you make, the more you pay in taxes. That's how it works. When you're not making any money, the government is not getting any money. The government doesn't develop any product or provide any service. They don't do that. So the government would be smart enough to say, you know what? I need to have tax breaks for corporations and for people who can invest in employing other people so we can make more money. And ladies and gentlemen, don't doubt me on this. The IRS, the government, has taken more revenue money in since Trump than they ever could have imagined to do when they had Obama there. When the economy is strong, that's when the government takes in more tax revenue. Don't be fooled. So anyways, I can go on with the list of the many awesome and wonderful things that President Trump has done and is doing. But see, it's going to come down to November the 3rd and whether you want those things to continue, whether you are the 10% or whether you're just, I don't know. If you're a Democrat and you haven't voted yet, I'm hoping you're listening to this because it is very vital that you take what I say very seriously. And the thing is, Michelle Obama wants you to take what she says very seriously, but it's all a lie. I could have spent the whole time dissecting him, and maybe I should at some point dissect the whole 24 minutes, but it's nonsense. It's grating on my ears. But my point is this, ladies and gentlemen. How do you want the next 4 years of your life to be, and possibly the next 8, 12, 16? Think about the future of your kids. Listen, all this stuff that we see now, the shutdown, doesn't have anything to do with President Trump. It has everything to do with Democrats. Trump is not running New York. He's not running Jersey. He's not running Pennsylvania. He's not running Illinois. He's not. He's not running. He's not running California. You can't even barely find a Republican or conservative in that particular state. Democrats are running them, and they're running them to hell, ladies and gentlemen. So, this is the thing. You got to make a decision on who you want as president next year. And it's coming down to the wire. And I just want to say, thank you very much for being part of the era of Reconstruction. Because it is your continued support that keeps this podcast on the air. I'm your host, Darren Williams of the Era Reconstruction. And I thank you once again for being a part of today's program.
Uncle Ruckus again. No relation. This podcast is paid for by the New Journey PAC and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.